Good day, how are you? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Implementing Real-Time Intelligence in Microsoft Fabric. So, who are we? I'm Martin Catherall, and I'm joined today by my friend, but first of all, a bit about me. So I'm a data platform MVP, use Microsoft Fabric a lot, been using it for the last 2 years, and I am really pleased to be sharing my knowledge with you. So, who's my friend today? Over to you, Adnan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marty. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the day today. I'm Mohammad Adnan. I go by Adnan. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and MCT as well, and consultant. And also I have my own YouTube channel. And you can reach out to me. My social handle is Mohammad Adnan T in LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram. Yeah, happy to have you here. And what we are going to discuss today, Marty?
Thanks a lot. So, today we're joined by two other people. We're joined by David Ding and Kelly Brookston. So they're our moderators for the day, and they're the people who did the real hard work. So while you might be watching this, and me and Adnan are simply talking, Kelly and David are in the background answering questions. If there's any questions they feel that need to be put through to us, they will, and we'll answer them in real time if you're watching this live. If not, you get the opportunity to for us to answer later on our community channel. So thanks very much to our moderators, Kelly and David. So this series, we're on to the third or fourth episode. It is the third episode. Yep, I was just checking there. Thought I got a bit mixed up. And it's about real-time analytics. Yep, so have fun and stay tuned and watch this show.
Yeah.
So coming up, there's the FabCon convention in Las Vegas. Runs from March 31st to the 2nd of April. Provides some great sessions, and there's also workshops either side of those dates. It's a fantastic conference. I spent quite a while in Las Vegas last year for the very first one. Great interactions with the product group, great interactions in the community zone. Learned a lot, made a lot of friends, great place. Can't recommend it enough. So hopefully see you there.
Yeah. And also they're running a discount here. So if you book right now, you will get like $150 discount on that.
Okay, yep. So that's a discount code. Thanks a lot for that, Annan.
Yeah. All right. So we'll get 50% on DP-700 exam, and it actually ends till March 31st, 2025. So before limited time offer, you can just apply for this one. All right. So if you have any questions, you can just type hi in the chat, and if you're watching through YouTube Live or any social network, you can just type hi and then ask your questions. Our moderator can help you answer those questions.
Okay, so let's get into this. To start with, we've got implementing real-time with Microsoft Fabric. So for the next 30 or 40 minutes, that's what we're going to talk about, implementing real-time analytics with Microsoft Fabric. So what we're going to cover today. So first of all, we're going to have a good bit of an overview of the DP-700 exam. Obviously, there's more to this exam than just real-time. There's other sections, and you may have already done the DP-600 exam. Obviously, there's a bit of crossover. One is based around analytics. The other is based around engineering. There's a bit of a crossover, but I would say that real-time is one of those sections where it's more geared towards the engineering angle than it is geared towards the analysis angle. So hopefully this series will, well, this particular episode in particular will put you in good stead. So what we're going to cover, why use Microsoft Fabric for any sort of data engineering and specifically for real-time engineering. We're going to understand why we need to use real-time analytics in Microsoft Fabric. And we look at the various components. We look at the use of real-time event streams. We'll work with real-time data in an Eventhouse. That's basically the storage angle of the real-time analytics ecosystem. We'll look at creating some real-time dashboards and why and how you can do them in Power BI or in the real-time analytics hub. And we'll finish off with some practical tips for looking at DP-700 and how you might be successful.
Yeah.
So, you Adnan. Okay, DP-700 overview. So, what have we got to talk about in this slide? Well, so what we're going to cover, we'll do the overview.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Adnan. Sorry.
So
what are we going?
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Mate.
Yep, sorry, the DP-700 overview. Sorry about that. I just got a little bit lost there. So the DP-700 overview. Let's get into it, Adnan, and see what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so it is the certification for the Microsoft Fabric Data Engineering certification. There's lots of different parts to this, but specifically this is around ingesting and transforming data. Now, as part of that, you can essentially split that into two categories. You can import stuff with batch data. So that's from kind of static data sets from like SQL Server, Cosmos DB, Oracle, somewhere that's got a static data set. So that's not what we're talking about in this scenario. What we're talking about is real-time analytics feeds. So feeds that are coming in perpetually and kind of all the time. So we'll talk about that. One of the other things on this section as well is securing and managing the analytics solution. And that's all good. Can you tell us a bit more, Adnan?
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, so we are just covering here today the real-time analytics part. So it actually, if you look at now, these are the depth of level categories where we can have it on the exams for DP-700. So basically, this mainly focus on analytics solutions, which actually covers the lifecycle management, security, and governance. And today we are here to talk about the yellow highlighted one, which is ingest and transform streaming data. And if you navigate to the study guide, which is aka.ms/DP700 study guide, you will see the complete list of granular skills that are covered on the exam. But basically, this is a great place to start the study guide and practice everything that you need to cover for the certification exams. And if you are an experienced DP-203, already a DP-203 certification holder, then this seems to be for you more streamlined and focused on simplifying analytics solutions within Microsoft Fabric platform. We'll talk more about that in the next slides. So now, as we talked about DP-203 and DP-700, now we wonder about what's the difference between these two. So technically, Microsoft DP-203 is focused on Azure data engineering, and DP-700 is focused on Fabric data engineering. As you can see, going forward, like from March 31st, 2025, DP-203 is retiring. So there is no more certifications for DP-203 from March 31st, 2025 onwards, because Microsoft is shifting their focus from towards Azure, not towards Azure, it's actually towards Fabric platform. So if you're thinking the tools what you have experience on DP-203 is not going to use anymore, that's not true. It's going to still exist. You can utilize those tools and functionality as far as it exists over there. As for your business need, you can use that. But the purpose of saying this is going forward, we had to take over towards the Fabric platform. Now, the main part, which is the introduction of Microsoft Fabric. So this is really cool thing. So everything start with the introduction. So what is Microsoft Fabric? And we'll talk about some of the components which it has, what are the workloads it has, like it has a data factory, data engineering, and also we'll talk about what are the other features which it covers in Fabric umbrella. All right, so Fabric is basically called as unified data platform for all the data professionals. So these days, the data is growing in a rapid, fast manner. We are getting the data from transactional databases. We are getting data from IoT sensors for real-time analytics. And all of these things, we can get the data from different sources, and we can combine all these things inside to one single platform. So that every professional, data professional specifically, whether they are data engineer, whether they are data scientist, or they are data analyst, or even the business analyst. So everybody can use the same data. So that's one of the beauty of that. So whether if you're going to use data factory, which is mainly the Power Query interface, and it's actually similar to what we usually have Azure Data Factory. So we can make use of that in Fabric. And now when it comes to data engineering, it is actually with Spark platform, you'll get the hyper performance for the transformation of hyper data. And then we'll also have a data science. If you are using any machine learning models, then you can also use the capability to build the models in Microsoft Fabric. And also it comes with real-time intelligence. Marty, as you aware, the Microsoft has recently combined real-time analytics and data activator inside real-time intelligence. So previously it was two separate things, and now they are combined into real-time intelligence. It actually gets the power of real-time analytics and data activator. We'll talk more about that in this session. And apart from this, recent introduction to this family is SQL databases. So this is an amazing one. So what we have since so far, the legacy Microsoft SQL Server, we actually brought up here on the Fabric platform itself. And also they introduced the industry-related solutions, which is mainly focused on specific industries like healthcare, sales and operations, and manufacturing. They provide some of these industry-based solutions. You can also check out that if you are a part of the business domain who need that particular industry solutions. And finally, the Power BI. Who don't know about that one? I think everybody who has joined the call must be aware of this Power BI. So it actually helps to analyze and visualize the data in beautiful interactive manner. And not only that, it's actually all the workload which is being used on the Fabric is actually backed by one single unified storage, which is OneLake. If you, in short, if I need to tell what is OneLake, it's actually what we have OneDrive for our office files. Like we can manage our Word document, emails, and presentation and all in one single platform, which is OneDrive. Similar to that, we have it here OneLake so that we can store all our data in one single place. It's not just only one single type of the file format. We can store the Delta Parquet file, we can store the CSV, we can store the JSON, and many more in one single place. And also we can share this with other people so that they can also take the data from the same location and do the processing or analyzing from that from based on their business requirement. And also it actually covers Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft has introduced Copilot, which is an AI assistant tool where you can have integrated into every layer of Microsoft Fabric, whether it's a data factory, you need help something on building machine learning model, or if you need something on building a Power BI report or writing a DAX query, or if you're a business user, if you want to ask any questions using natural language, you can also do everything with the help of Copilot. So all these things is added here. And finally, in terms of Purview, Microsoft Purview is actually there. It actually helps us to make the governance and compliance for this part. So this is all about Microsoft Fabric as an overview, which it has unified SaaS product, security and governance, compute and storage, and business model, everything on a single platform. Now, as we talked about the overview of Microsoft Fabric, now let's explore what actually in hand for data engineering in Microsoft Fabric, which makes it powerful and flexible platform for managing and analyzing your organizational data. The first thing here is Microsoft Fabric allows you to create a unified lakehouse which consolidate all your organizational data into one single repository, I can say, and with the various data type formats, which is easier to manage, analyze your data in one place. And the most important part for data engineers is the use of Spark runtime, which actually can easily perform large scale of the data processing for analytics here. And Spark's distributed compute capabilities enables efficient handling of the data workloads, which has the big data workloads, and ensuring high performance and scalability. And for me personally, this actually the cool feature, which it can author on tool of our choice. Basically, I'm not a kind of hardcore coder so that I can use Spark to use our job here. I prefer mostly write to SQL queries, or it can be visual interaction, drag and drop functionality like data flows. So if I need my work to be done, I can use any other tool. I can use the Python script using Spark Notebook. I can use SQL queries also inside to that, or I can use the data flows in order to transform the data here. Obviously, it has certain limitations, but it actually works that way. Um,
So Adnan, we've got a lot of
yeah,
choice in Fabric for real time. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, exactly. So we are here for Fabric real time, but we need to use these tools also in order to use in the real time analytics.
Cool.
Okay, so finally, the integrated. So Fabric actually integrates with other workloads inside to this Fabric platform, whether this is using data engineering, data science, or data analyst, everybody can work on these two. So for you, Matty, so what's your preferable choice of the tool, whether it's a Spark Notebook, SQL, or data flows? What's your choice, Matty, if you want to use for data streaming? All right, moving on to the next one, real-time analytics in Fabric. Now, as initial beginning of this session, what is just mentioned about, there are two types of data analytics which we have. One is a batch data analytics, another is the streaming data analytics. So batch is usually we can load the data from our transaction database every hour or every day basis, and then we can do the analysis on top of that. Now, here we are talking about the real-time analytics, where we are getting the data from different IoT sensors. It can be from Uber or from stock market analysis, which is actually the real-time data. Or also, if you are a manufacturing industry and you have a bigger plants, and you want to monitor the heat of a particular machine, that it should not go beyond to a certain limit, and you are setting up then IoT sensors inside to that machine, so that you can get the real-time data out of it, and then you can do the analysis on real time, which is basically not exactly the real time, it's near real time, because the latency which it has sent the data from that particular machine, it has to go to the server, and then we can analyze the data. It will be a lag of for a few seconds or nanoseconds. So that's why we call it as near real time here in this case. So if you want to monitor a machinery data like IoT sensor, the heat of a particular machines, you can also do that in real time. Because if you have a threshold limit of a machinery should not go beyond 200 degrees Celsius, in order to that it cannot burn the particular product on the particular machine. So you need to have an alert on that. So we'll talk about more about that with the help of data activator. We can do those stuff in the upcoming slides. And now the world is moving towards actually the Lambda architecture, which means we can do the batch processing. We can also do the real-time intelligence together and then build analytics on top of that with the help of Power BI. So as we talked about this streaming data, which is coming from, as we talked about this streaming data, which is coming from IoT sensors, so basically, the word CSI. So data streaming is basically is unbounded, which is it's actually coming up here continuous manner from that particular IoT devices. So that is what it is unbounded here. And every event which is actually happening on that particular IoT devices is backed by a time period. So it actually sends information for a particular time period. This is the temperature of that device, and now this is the temperature of this device. So every event has a time period to that. So we can directly use that, and then in the data activator, we can use a trigger so that people can take actions out of it, or we can aggregate those data for our analytic purpose. Let's say what is an average of particular machine for the previous 15 minutes. We can also aggregate the data in on the go in the KQL itself, which is on the real-time analytics. And finally, if you want to visualize your data in real time, you can also do that using KQL real-time dashboards. And also, if you want to do this storage into one single platform, which is one lake, and from there you want to analyze the historical data, that is also possible to do it in Power BI. So there is a lot more the functionality which it provides in real-time analytics. Okay, so when it comes to real-time analytics, there are few steps involved here. So first of all is the event stream. So event stream is actually the main source where we can get the data from various different sources. And we'll talk about what are the source we can cover on real-time analytics in a bit. So we can just use this real-time event streams. So we can just ingest the data and then we can load the data into the Eventhouse. So Eventhouse, we can say it's basically a server if you're talking about SQL Server and databases. So let's assume that Eventhouse is basically a server where you can store all your data in one single platform, and every Eventhouse will have one or more KQL databases. So you can store the data which comes from Eventstream via Eventhouse into KQL databases for your use purpose. And that if you want to query your data from KQL databases, you can also do that using the regular query itself. The beauty of real-time intelligence is Microsoft adding one or more tool languages inside to each and every layer. So like we talked about, we can use here Spark Notebook, we can use SQL, we can also use Data Factory for a data engineering purpose. Here, if you want to use KQL query language, we can use that. It's really simple actually. We can easily learn the KQL languages. But also, if you are familiar with SQL queries, we can use certain subset of SQL queries which actually works inside to this KQL query language itself. Not all the SQL statement will work here. Only the subset of SQL functions can work here. So you can also make use of that. But I recommend you to go and learn KQL queries itself for to do this one. And then what you can do, you can also directly visualize the data into real-time dashboard, or you can also directly connect to Power BI so that you can do the analytics on top of that. And finally, my favorite part, which is data activator. So it actually helps us to configure alerts. Like I mentioned here, if you have a plant machinery, if the temperature goes beyond 200 degrees Celsius, then we'll ingest the data through Eventstream and it goes through Eventhouse and KQL database. And then it directly goes to this one, which is data activator for every event. And then if it goes beyond a certain threshold, which is set up here, it can actually send an email notification, or you can also send us any alerts or any jobs for that. You can also send Teams notification for that. So all these actions we can take through data activator. Okay, so the next thing here is, as we talked about managing real-time sources in real-time hub. So we talked a lot about what is real-time as of now. So where we need to access those things. So Microsoft has done a beautiful thing where it has added real-time hub on the left-hand side. When you log into Power BI service, it's a centralized place where actually when you click on that, it actually gives you one single repository. We can say that we can find all our needs for real-time analytics here. This is the place where we can subscribe to existing Azure events or Fabric events. You can also create your additional data sources. You can also create your real-time dashboard. You can also view your reports. You can also view your tables and all of those things in one single place. And from here also, you can also share with other people so that they can also work on this part. So this is all about Fabric real-time managing of all those things. So Martin, can you just talk about what is how it goes on ingest and transform the data in real time?
Yeah, sure can, and sure can. So you can see on the screen what we might see if we went into the Event Hub. And event streams in Microsoft Fabric, they're actually used to grab, transform, and load real-time data from a real wide variety of streaming data sources. So when you set an event stream up, you decide on the actual source that you're going to get, and there can be a wide variety of sources. So, and they support a wide range of data sources. Some of the external sources that we might want to grab were things like Azure Storage. So, an Azure Storage event might create streams that come over for us to ingest. Azure Event Hubs, Azure IoT Hubs, Apache Spark. A big one is change data capture. So, transactional databases we might use as a source. As their data changes, some of their logs might capture details of the changes that happened on the source system. And that can be used as a real-time feed for us to ingest. We've also got Fabric events, such as changes in Fabric items that exist in workspaces. For example, data changes in OneLake, and any events associated with Fabric jobs. So events is a big source of data changes. But as well as that, if we're just setting something up to kind of say learn or explore with this, we've got some sample data sources that we can use to go basically learn this. We don't have to already have had one set up, which has been a bit of an impediment in the past for people maybe wanting to learn about real-time analytics. But what can you transform within an event stream? So the stream that comes across is known as the event stream. And you can transform the data as it flows into the stream. And that enables you to do various tasks on it, like filter. You can summarize, or you can actually just reshape the data with a variety of queries into anything that you really want to. So a filter, maybe self-explanatory to people on here, use of a where clause. Does my data does my data correspond to some sort of value? Is it outside of the parameters of what's acceptable? And you can manage all the fields by name or by ordinal. You can also aggregate the data. So as the data comes in, you might want to say take a 5-minute rolling window of values and aggregate them over that time slice. You can group by and summarize and do things like that. Union, there's some other keywords within KQL itself that you may not have discovered with it while you are not in the SQL language. Things like expand and other sources, or not sources, other keywords that can do some fantastic things to analyze the data. So what sort of destinations can we use? So we've talked about sources. We talked about the stream that ingests. But Anand, when we pull the stream in, it's all very well grabbing it from a place and doing analytics on it as it comes across. But we don't just want to lose the data. We want to actually put the data somewhere. So we've got a variety. Sorry, are you going to say something, mate?
No. Yeah, continue.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Yeah, so we've got a variety of places where we can put the data. And you might be familiar with things like the Lakehouse, which we use for batch data as well. So similarly, we have a data store called an Eventhouse. And that's literally made up of a database where we can use the KQL language to investigate real-time data. We can also use an event stream as the destination, which is kind of like the stream that originally comes across. But what we might want to do there is basically split that stream into another stream and do some additional analytics on that stream of data itself. We can stream to a custom endpoint if we so desire. And one of the other things we can use, which Anana's talked about quite a bit, is actually Fabric Activator. And that's used to generate alerts on the type of data that's coming across. So that's a bit of an overview, Anand. Should we move on? Okay, so let's see what we're looking at here. In front of us, we've got a simple screen where all the parts that I've just talked about are kind of coming together. So this is basically in the real-time hub as well. And the main components of the event stream, which we've already talked about, the sources, the transformations, and the destination. So really 3 of them. And they're the 3 main components that we have to deal with here. So the sources, that's labeled 1 in the diagram, and you can see it over on the left-hand side of the window. So the sources are where your events data really comes from. So you can pick event hubs, like we've been through them in the last slide. Choosing sample data, That's a really cool thing you can do. There's data about taxis and data about stores and bicycles and things like that. And they'll fire data in real time. There's no setting up. You just pick it and away you go. You can use a custom app as your source type if you like. And you can also choose from a vast variety of data formats and what we call consumer groups as your sources. So the transformations, you can add transformations that filter, as we've said. You can aggregate the data as it's processed in the stream, coming across from the source to the destination. And some of the transformations include, really common data types, like we've said: filter, joining, aggregating, grouping. And the big keyword that I kind of find here to define the sources is temporal windowing features. So you'll hear that a lot. Some kind of new words that we don't really hear within like the batch data source windows, because now real time, we're talking about time periods. We're talking about perpetual data coming in and unbounded streams. And I talked previously about an unbounded stream of data flowing in to your source and us dealing with it in our transformation. So that's where you'll hear the temporal window function that enables you to analyze the data within discrete time periods. So, really let that sink in. The fact that we're dealing now with time as well as the data's coming in. The data itself might not contain anything to do with time, but the time we actually grabbed it is very relevant to us to maybe test what happened in a certain period. And then we got the destinations. So you can see them in the middle. And in this graphic here, we've got one source, we've got one transformation, and we're going to more than one destination because we've got a derived stream here. So the destinations are where you transform your event data and where you store it. So an example is you can store the results from your event stream in a table, and that table might exist in the Eventhouse, or it might exist in the Lakehouse. Or you could even redirect it to another event stream and process it further. Maybe that event stream would go to like Data Activator and you trigger an action. Your data's come in, it contains time, not time data, it contains temperatures, and your temperature is warmer than the upper bound of the temperature. So it might come in, it might be 50 degrees, and your upper bound is 45 degrees. You want to trigger an alert and go tell someone that something needs to be done. So you can use event streams. You can edit them on the canvas, and you can add and manage your own data sources and your destinations all through that canvas. You can also see the event data as it come in. We can see down the bottom of that screen, there's a table, and that's listing our data as it comes in. Obviously, it's a static graphic, but if you set this up yourself and plug it into a real-time stream, you'll see that change, and you'll be able to view your destination as your data flows through. So, Anand, what have we got on the next slide?
Yeah. So before going into the next one, I just want to add my thoughts here. Is like the beauty of this visual interface is like whatever we do, we can preview the data at the bottom of the screen. So it's really satisfied as what we are doing is actually right or wrong here. So that's the glimpse you can see it on the bottom screen that you can visualize right away. It's similar to that what we usually have in Power Query in Power BI. All right. Moving to the next one, it's the sources and destination.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, everyone's got a different viewpoint on this. I think with batch data, Anand, people are really familiar with it. They've seen things like SQL Server. They probably might be familiar with Azure ADF, Azure Data Factory, other things from like AWS or whoever it is. It's all very familiar, but the real-time analytics hub might not be so familiar. But going into it and having that visual in front of you where you can change destinations and sources quite intuitively, I think is really good. And I encourage people to play with that and use the data streams that Microsoft make available for you to learn these things intuitively. So just looking at the sources and the destinations again, and just list them off. We've already been through them a bit, but the event hubs and the IoT hubs, very, very similar as sources. And if you were setting this up to provide an event stream, not that you might want to do this as part of the exam or anything, but if you set them up, obviously you'd have a decision to make. Do you want an event source? Do you want an event hub? Depending on how that's going to talk back and forth, or maybe not, as the case may be. And we can see about 4 or 5, I think there's 5 there, CDC sources. So Azure SQL database, Postgres, MySQL, and Cosmos DB. So they can all provide change data capture, and people might be more familiar with change data capture from SQL Server or Azure. So as data goes into those databases, it is stored in a separate table where the change is in the data or kept. We might say change your address from, I don't know, 10 John Street to 20 Mary Street. And we want to know about that change, that it said one thing at one point in time and another thing in another point in time. And that would be used as like the source of our ingestion. So there's a whole range of other cloud providers we can use as sources as well. This is not really a definitive list, but we can use Google Cloud, that pub sub model. It's quite common with a lot of data sources. Amazon Kinesis provides a good data stream, as does Confluent Kafka. So some big players in the market there that can provide us with event streams. And then we've got like Fabric and Azure itself. So within the Fabric workspace, we might have various components that could provide us with sources and change. So as things change within the workspace, if that specific change can fire off an event, and a good example might be something changing within OneLake files, for example. Again, your address changes, for example, and we can fire off an event and ingest it into our real-time system. And then you've got other things you can use, such as your custom endpoints that you might want to connect to, and the sample data, which I've talked about quite a bit, and is a great source of upskilling. And we've said about the destinations. I think some of them are fairly intuitive. We probably learned about the lake house in other areas. The Eventhouse is very similar. Obviously, some big differences with the lake house that holds static data. But the Eventhouse, obviously, once it's in there, it is static, but it can be ingested obviously into that real-time stream of data, and it can ingest a lot of data over a short amount of time into that Eventhouse. Once it's in the Eventhouse, it basically, you might have heard it referred to as the KQL database, and that can be accessed with a language called Kusto query language. The Eventhouse itself came from being known as Azure Data Explorer. And other people might know the KQL query language from log analytics within Azure itself. So very, very similar to the SQL language. Just kind of watch out when you hear new languages described as SQL-like. A lot of the data stores contain rows and columns, as does a SQL database. And to a certain point, we can query and get data back relatively similarly, like a select statement or a projection in KQL. But as you learn more and more about these languages, whether it's KQL or DAX or whatever it is, you probably find that at some point they diverge a little, and you start learning new syntax, and you might start learning new and innovative ways to explore the data. Do you find that at all, Anna?
Sorry, repeat again.
Sorry, do you like the KQL language yourself?
Yeah, I like it a lot. It is actually a simple language. We can write our queries and get the result. I really like that.
Yeah, it's good. So on the next slide, I think we're going to talk about some of the things we can do within that language. And most of them are probably quite obvious if you've used SQL before. Where clauses for filters, aggregating data, summing it, finding the min, the max if you're within a specific range, and grouping by, which obviously which often goes hand in hand with aggregating data. We might have multiple streams or multiple groups of data that we might want to union together. And we can do that within the Kusto query language. This is one of the kind of differences with SQL I found. So the union keyword does very much the same thing, but it's got some additional extensions, which would be massively useful in SQL. And this is one of the places where you might see, oh, this new language does something that the old language doesn't, and this will be really useful in that particular thing. So that's just one example of where you might see things that are slightly different, not too different, and very intuitive. And we talked a lot about the temporal windows. And there's not just one temporal window. There's actually quite a few of them. So we can have a tumbling window. A sliding window is probably what most people might be more familiar with. Like it's sliding across in time. So we can slide maybe at 5-minute intervals and take like a rolling average of some data that may be coming in to spot things like outliers and things like that. We can have hopping windows that very similar to sliding windows that maybe move in steps, and we can have snapshot windows as well. So that's what we've got there for windowing. And what have we got next coming up, Anand? I think we're going to talk about visualizing data, are we? Yeah, we are. Yeah. So when people talk to me about visualizing data, normally within Fabric or within the Microsoft ecosystem generally, I straight away think Power BI. Is that what you normally think, Anand?
Yeah, we can also do in Power BI and as well as using real-time dashboards.
Yeah. So I was like quite surprised the first time I went into the real-time analytics hub, and I discovered that we can actually use the hub to generate our own dashboards. We don't have to use Power BI. So you can create a query. Here, the query is obviously getting 3 lots of data. And it's displaying them as a bar chart. So we could display this as a bar chart. We can display it as a pie chart. We can display it as a column chart. Really, we've got a whole heap of different charts that we can change with the click of a button. Is that right, Anna?
Yeah, absolutely. It gives similar functionalities of Power BI, but not exactly the Power BI.
Yeah, and we can then pin these visualizations to our own dashboards.
The dashboard. Yeah, it actually renders on a real time. So that's
that's right. And we could see these change obviously in real time, but it's real time, so the data is not remaining static. It's actually changing. So it's like really cool. And it doesn't limit us to Power BI. We may well be able to do some more better visualizations or some more user-friendly visualizations within that tool. But doing things like profiling of data or seeing how many values we've got somewhere or the other is quite easy to spot in a chart. Maybe not so easy in a table, but the charting gives us quite a lot of options to explore our data with. And we can publish these tiles to enable our users to explore the data. And they contain interactive components. We can drill down, and we can use the visual interface to filter, aggregate, group by, any of those things that we've talked about on the last slide. So
exactly.
all good stuff, Anand. What are we going to talk about now, or what are we going to have a look at? We're going to talk about automating actions, are we? Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Automating actions with Activator. So Activator is probably the new kid on the block, so to speak. And it's a technology in Microsoft Fabric that enables automated processing of like events that can trigger actions. So we can use Activator to kind of notify via email that Anand's already talked about. We got quite a big range of things we can do. So understanding some of the key concepts within Activator. It operates based on 4 concepts: the concepts of events, objects, triggers, and properties. And understanding those 4 principles will enable you to utilize the capabilities of Activator more effectively. So the events, we can consider all data sources or all sequence of events that represent any observation to do with the status of the object to be an event. Basically, as something changes, that's an event. We've got objects, and there can be tangible items, that occur in our data, like vehicles or packages. They can be abstract concepts like, advertising campaigns, user sessions. So getting to know those is quite good. We've also got rules. So Activator's rules, they're designed to monitor your events and the data that's in those specific events. Once a certain condition occurs within that event, we will raise an event to send an email or do whatever. So all these concepts are kind of interrelated. And then lastly, we've got the properties, and they're beneficial for reusing logic across the various triggers. And reuse is obviously quite a good aspect of software engineering. For instance, you can set up a property on smart lighting, for example, that triggers the average brightness of the room over a certain period of time. Maybe you want it really bright during the busiest hours of the day, and not so bright during, or maybe no light at all, during times when we are switched off, and you can monitor things like that. So that's basically automating actions within Data Activator ourselves. What do you think of that, Anna?
Yeah, you pretty good explain on what is Data Activator very clearly. Thanks for that. And with the interest of the time, we just need to move a little bit quicker. So here is the next slide for now.
Okay, so we talked about the sinks and the places where we can store the data. It's all scalable. We talked about the KQL database. One thing we haven't talked about are KQL query sets. So basically, it's just a word for the queries. We can write the queries kind of off the top of our heads if we're really good with the language, as we can with SQL or whatever. Or we can use AI assistants, copilots, that kind of thing. So we already talked about them a little bit. The query sets is really the only thing we not dwelled on, but they're just queries. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with writing a query, whether it's in SQL or another language. So I think we've got a new section now. Anna, is it something to do with event houses?
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty amazing. So you covered a lot now. So let me take a little bit now from here. So as Matty has explained a lot about these things, real-time analytics, and short about Eventhouse and all of this. So let's dig into deeper about what exactly the Eventhouse is. So like I said, Eventhouse is basically kind of a server, we can say. And with the help of that, we can do three things from here, which is we can write KQL queries, or we can also use subset of SQL statements in order to generate the data based on our need. The second is we can connect to the real-time dashboard directly so that we can visualize the data in real time. The third thing is we can connect directly to Fabric Data Activator so that we can directly connect to the activator and build the insights or triggers on top of that. So moving on to the next one, which is what are the things what you need to consider when you are creating an event house. First of all, you need to be in a Fabric capacity and you need to have required access so that you can create this event house in your workspace here. And once you create an event host, by default, it will comes with a KQL database for you, where you can create your table, you can create your maintenance view, you can also create stored functions over there. And we can also use KQL query languages so that you can query your data and then do the visualizations on top of that. So it's the same thing. So here also I'm repeating again, like we can also use KQL and SQL. So 100% SQL functions is not supported for now. You can use better to learn KQL languages. It's pretty easy. So you can just start writing. It's a kind of similar natural language. We can just type here. We'll talk about that, how we can write those statements in the next slide. And most importantly, if you are not sure about how to write the code, anyway, Copilot is there. So you can just ask Copilot your questions. It can help you to write the KQL queries, and then you can do your analysis on top of that.
Great to see Copilot everywhere.
Yeah, actually, that's an amazing addition from Microsoft. All right. So in terms of KQL, how you want to query your tables here. So as you can see, if you are coming from SQL background, then you can, what you usually do if you want to select few columns from a table, we usually type select trip ID, vendor ID, pickup time, and fare amount from automotive tables. That's what we usually write in the SQL statement. But here in KQL, it's a little bit different. So we just need to define the table name first, and then we need to use the pipe symbol here, and then we need to use project as a kind of thing here. Project means select, which is means to display here basically. So it's, and then specify the name of the column which you want to display over here. So here in this case, it's going to display 4 columns from these automated tables when you execute this query in the KQL. Now, this is all about filtering the columns. Now, if you want to filter the rows, it's a similar statement. We can apply the where clause here. So you can define the table name, which is automotive, and then we can define the table name and then where clause and specify the columns which you want to apply the filters here. Here in this example, I added here the get month, which is bracket and pickup date time in is equal to get here for now as an example, and then we can project to select those columns here. So this actually helps us to filter rows as well on this particular thing. Now, when it comes to also the summarize function, I think Matty already talked about this in the earlier session on this one. And if you want to summarize a particular table, then you can just use summarize and then average the name of the column. It can give the average of a particular table on this part on top of the filtration or the selection of the column what you have defined over there. So KQL is pretty simple. It's not really complex. You can just start with that and hopefully you will learn very quickly compared to other languages. So when it comes to KQL, there are also certain advanced features available here, which is materialized view. I'm just again and again comparing this with SQL because if you are from a data background, it will be easier for you to understand. Materialized views is similar to views what we have it on SQL Server. So understanding materialized view in Eventhouse is crucial because they optimize performance by summarizing the data from the source table, enabling efficient and real-time analysis frequent query data here. There are certain features here, which is summary of the data. It encapsulates a summary statement from a source table or another materialized view here. So this materialized view actually is pre-calculated stored data. So whenever you query here, it actually pulls the data and show it to you. It's not actually processing during the execution of the time. So that's why it saves the time and you can visualize the data right away. So the other thing is real-time updates, where it actually populates the new data ingested as soon as it arrives. And also it can backfill the old data, which is already there on the real table. And query like tables, you can query just like a regular tables as a backup of that, and efficient analysis. So you can optimize the performance for frequently used queries on this part. So this is all about materialized view. Now, when it comes to stored functions, this is similar to what we have it on stored procedures on the SQL Server. So understanding stored function is in the Eventhouse is also important because they simplify and streamline repeated queries here. And it also helps in enhancing efficiency and maintaining and for parameters and reusable queries for that part. A certain functionalities here is encapsulated queries, where you can simplify repeated queries by encapsulating them as functions. And it also helps parameterize, allows for variable values to be passed into the functions, and it also reusable. Easily reuse common queries across different file formats and different data sets here. And efficient, it can also improve the efficiency and maintainability. And it also helps in order for us to pass the dynamic parameters also inside to this one. Okay, so now let's come to this last topic about some practical tips here. So I will tell some of the things from my side, and Marty, I request also to you also help you here, help the audience so
Yeah,
that they can also get help on this part. So what
certainly.
you suggest to go on this one as a kind of practical tip to pass the exam DP-700? What the user has to do as a practice for themselves?
Yeah, some great tips there about hands-on practice, study guides, all the usual stuff. One of the things that I would say about rehearsing for this exam and practicing is go into the real-time hub and set something up. You don't have to have a data set or a source ready. You'll be able to pick one of the sources that already exist. You can pick a source that exists and you can go play with it. Have a good play, follow the learn modules through, and as the icing on the cake, there's actually an applied skill. So Microsoft release applied skills for all these technologies, and one of them is on real-time analytics. It's a 2-hour kind of exam simulation. You can take it as many times as you like. I think there's a bit of a stand-down period if you fail, but if you fail, don't worry, it's free. Go in, have a play, take it, get used to the interface, and upskill yourself on real-time engineering. So, Anand, kind of getting towards the end now. Can we move on?
Yeah, definitely. And like Matty said, it is recommended to go with Microsoft Learn as a best practices so that you can learn things in a step-by-step manner.
Yeah,
Right.
so there you can see that this was the fourth in a series. Well, this was the third actually in a big series on getting certified, becoming a Fabric data engineer. Next up, we've got data warehousing in Microsoft Fabric. That's on tomorrow. Anything else we've got to mention there, Anand? Any more slides about certain events?
Yeah, definitely. We have it again, this FabCon.
Yeah, like FabCon. I won't repeat myself, but fabulous events, great interactions. Apart from the technology, you'll make a lot of friends, meet people with similar interests to yourself. And if you get the opportunity to go, I would go.
Yeah, yeah. It's March 31st to April 2nd, 2025. Okay, mark your calendar for that. Okay, now it's all we talked about this DP-700. So if you take within this 31st March 2025, then you will get 50% discount on the vouchers. Make sure to use this time and benefit this 50% discount on your exams. You can just go to aka.ms/dc/dp700.
Great stuff. Okay, so let's see if we've got any questions in the chat or there's anything coming through. And while we wait, how do you feel about real-time analytics, and Anne? Have you done many projects with the technology?
Not really to be real time, but I have done it for my YouTube videos. So it actually is
Okay.
really good. And it's going to be big in my assumption because these days everything is going on IoT, cloud, and real-time analysis. So this is going to be a big in near real time. So with the interest of the time, so we can find the more resources at ak.ms/imready/dp700 prepare. For further continuing of the session, you can just post it on the blog post on the community side on the Fabric, which is ak.ms/forums/DP-700.
Great stuff, and that's where people can put the questions and we'll come back and answer them. So I think that's all we've got, mate. I think all that remains for us to do is say goodbye. Thanks for joining us.